are you? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I am Simona Gorton, and I live in Seattle, Washington with my husband Caleb. He's a sports medicine trainer, and we do youth work at our church. I work for 9 Marks. I'm their international operations manager, so I get to work with people around the world every day, just seeing what God is doing, helping coordinate translation projects, and it's just an incredible privilege to be a part of that.
Nice.
So I love hiking, anything outdoors, sailing. My husband and I love to backpack, so yeah. What led you to write this book? So actually this was really just God opening up a series of doors. Grace Townsend Gorth, she's the daughter of Cameron and Elaine Townsend. We ended up getting to know her as a family. She works with JARS, and so she came to our house and happened to mention that she was Cameron Townsend's daughter. And we had grown up reading missionary biographies that had been a huge part of my growing up and had really impacted me a lot. And so I immediately started fangirling and was like, oh my goodness, I can't believe you're their daughter. So she started to tell stories about her dad, and the next time she came to our house, she told stories about her mom. And I was in the middle of deciding what to do right after high school. I was wanting to do a writing project and ended up just falling in love with her mom through her stories and realizing, there aren't a lot of books written like this about a woman who came alongside a wonderful godly man. I mean, there are the Amy Carmichaels, and that's a bit of a different kind of calling. And then there's the Elaine Townsends, who marry Cameron and kind of are in their husband's shadow and just faithfully serve and are dynamic, wonderful women in their own right. And that story deserves to be told. So, yeah. Tell us about your book. Well, this is the story of Elaine Townsend. She grew up in Chicago, was a socialite, very dynamic, lovely woman, worked in the church her whole life, and in her early 20s realized that she wasn't saved. She won a trip around the world. The Herald and Tribune, a newspaper, put on a competition for the best Catholic, best Protestant, best Jew, which makes me laugh when I think of it. But it ended up changing her life in a number of different ways. I think she saw a lot of different parts of the world. She saw how people that claimed to be Christians actually lived, and I think she'd been fairly sheltered growing up. So she came back and was just a bit shaken up by that, and ended up being a part of a Bible study at her sister's church. And the lady was talking in Romans and in Leviticus about like the ceremonial laws, and somehow, as Elaine tells it, somehow brought it around to explain the gospel of grace, and it just hit Elaine, and she was never the same. She came home to her dad, and she was like, why haven't you ever told me? This is incredible. So that just really powered her the rest of her life. And she raised 4 kids in the jungles of Peru, moved to Colombia when it was without Christian influence, and there was a lot of tension there. So she went through a lot of different moves. She went to Russia during the Cold War 18 times. So yeah, just an incredible. She learned Russian to be a translator for her husband. Showed a lot of hospitality. We heard that from a lot of people. Just she welcomed us in, she loved us, she cared for us. Many missionaries on the field, that really was her gifting. Why should people read it? Well, I think Elaine has a lot to offer women today, and that's part of why I wrote it. Is there aren't, like I said, I grew up reading missionary biographies. Most of them were men, and God gifts men in a particular way. He calls men in a particular way, and for a woman to take on her husband's calling, I think is a really remarkable thing, something you don't see a lot today. And not that there are not women doing that, there are, but to have somebody so dynamic and so gifted in her own right that really could have, everybody said she could have done things, right? Like she had her own giftings, her own strengths, and for her to really put those under the shadow of her husband, in a sense, not to diminish them, but really to increase what the Lord was calling him and gifting him in, is something that I think women today can learn a lot from. Something that I've learned from in so many ways, of just how do I open my home in a way that's welcoming, in a way that serves my husband, and he's a youth director, so it hits close to home in that sense. But yeah, just God did incredible things in her life. there are many, many stories that really engaged me and taught me from her life. How did you come to faith? I think probably the simplest answer to that would really just be through the faithful witness of my parents. I grew up in the church. I would say there was definitely a point of realizing like there are two sides to this world that we're in. You know, there's the light side and the darkness side, and that definitely was a conscious moment for me, and realizing like I want to be with, you know, I want to have God as my father and, you know, be on the side of the light, as it were. So I think that's the simplest way to put it. Is there a book that has particularly influenced you? I think Hudson Taylor's Spiritual Secret is probably the first book I remember being just floored by. I remember I was about 8 years old and I was up till probably 1 o'clock reading that book, and I think the thing that stands out to me most from it is just I want to be in a place where God is working. Like, I want to see that and be a part of that. And I hadn't seen that a lot growing up in the churches I had been a part of, and so to me it kind of felt like I have to go to the mission field to see that. And since then I've been in several good churches and seen like the body of Christ can be amazing and incredible, and what God meant it to be here in the States. But I think that's part of what initially fueled my passion for missions, was God is doing amazing things, and that's a really incredible thing. Is there a passage that has spoken to you most strongly in the last year? I think I was reading in Job a few months ago, and there's a verse that says, "He knows the way that I take." And Job is in the midst of tremendous suffering, obviously, as we all know. And it's really simple, and I think probably most of the times I've read Job, I've missed it. But reading through it that time, it just hit me. It was like, wow, that's like the God of the universe knows every single step that we take, knows every single moment of our days. And there are a lot of other incredible, wonderful doctrines in the Bible, and that one just hits so close to home, and it's so personal, with a God who is also our Father and who loves us. If we could look inside your refrigerator, what would surprise us? Probably the amount of milk my husband drinks. That would probably be what comes to mind. Yeah. Would you rather fight one horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses? My father-in-law asks these kinds of questions. Ducks are probably less aggressive than horses, so probably one horse-sized duck. Probably just feed it a loaf of bread and be done.
Yeah, that's right.
What modern habit do you wish would just die out? I think feeling like we don't need to have a personal connection to other people. I think that might be more an American thing than a modern thing.
No, I'd say it's a Western world thing in general.
Yeah. No, I think that's fair. But yeah, just not having a sense that, man, we're in community with each other, and we're part of something together, even if we're not all Christians. Like, there's just less of a getting to know one another and living in community. So.